Welcome to Knife Chats. If you like what you see, give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, share it with friends, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Thank you. Thought I'd take a few minutes to talk about my Rough Ryder Cotton Samplers. Now, I bought these knives primarily for their historical significance and not for their practicality because, quite frankly, I don't see the knives as that practical unless you're somebody who actually does what the knife was designed to do. A lot of people are talking about actually using this as an EDC, and some people are actually doing that. I'm not sure if it's really the best knife for everyday carry. I could be wrong. Wouldn't be the first time I was wrong about something, but for me, that wasn't the reason I picked it up. I picked it up because it's really a cool looking knife and there's a lot of history behind the pattern. So let's get started. First of all, I've known about cotton samplers well before they started coming out. And actually, Rough Ryder was not the first company in modern times to come out with one. I think the first one in modern times in like the last 15 or 20 years that actually popped a cotton sampler, I think was Great Eastern. And theirs was in the $120 to $150 range when it first came out. And that was way more than I was going to spend on a knife that I was not very familiar with. So I did not buy it when Great Eastern came out with it. And I remember sending emails to Rough Ryder on a couple occasions saying, when they'd say, hey, what would be a cool knife to make, I would mention things like the cotton sampler. I'm sure other people did too, because I'm sure they did not make this simply because of me, because if they had made it because of me, it would have shown up first in white smooth bone. And this is the way it first showed up. And it had a special box about a workman's knife, and it had the cotton sampler on it. I've got the box somewhere, but I don't know where. And it is in Appaloosa bone, not white smooth bone, which is what I would have loved it to be in. But the knife itself, proportional wise, is very close to what you would have seen 100 years ago. So the knife is actually based on a pattern from at least the 1930s and possibly even earlier. I know this shows up in the E.C. Simmons catalog looking almost identical to this, right down to the closed length, which is right at 4 inches long. And then you've got the really funky looking blade, the interesting blade on it, which is not a very long blade when you get right down to it. It is about 2 and maybe 5/8 or 2 and, well, not 5/8, 2 and 7/8 inches long, but with a cutting edge that is just about 2 1/8 inches long, and a very, well, you can see how it rocks. It rocks out to right at 2 1/4 inches long. So that's the full cutting edge, but if you were to just do it straight out, it's right at a little over 2 inches. Very wide belly blade, with like a spay front, so it's like a very fat spay blade, and you've got this flat portion here. And as many people have already talked about, the knife was used by cotton samplers, so not out in the field, but people who would be checking bales of cotton, and that's what this flat portion was for. They would pull the fibers across there and see how well they would break up in the strands and everything. And the blade was used to cut into the bale of cotton. And as you can tell, not a very sharp point. I'm actually pushing in there, and I'm not cutting myself because it is like a spay tip. But you would actually, it's more like a scalpel, and you would cut into the cotton and pull out a little bit of it. So you're not doing a lot of damage to the bale. It's not like you're cutting way deep into the bale or anything, as far as I know. The Rough Ryder version is really nice. I cannot fault the quality of the build on this or anything. I mean, the Appaloosa bone on mine also is pretty evenly matched, and I really like the way it looks. Well, you got the brass liners, brass pins, a brass lanyard tube here, so the lanyard hole is actually got a trim in there with a tube, and it's pretty flush. You've got your nickel silver Rough Ryder shield here, and nickel silver bolsters with the single line there, the single ring nickel silver bolster. 448 stainless steel, typical of what you find in Rough Ryder knives. A good half stop, nice solid half stop, nice walk and talk all around. Fit and finish is fabulous. I mean, especially on this first one, the first one I ever bought. The reason I bought it in the Appaloosa bone is because I wasn't sure they would ever make another one, because depending on how well this one would have sold would have been determining if any other ones would have been made. So it sold well enough that they decided to make other ones. I never bothered to pick up any other ones until I picked up this one very recently, because really the only other one I'd be interested in would be one that would be in either white smooth bone or in tortoiseshell, an acrylic tortoiseshell. No fault of the knife. I mean, it's, like I said, build-wise, it is fantastic. That blade is tight as can be, and it's got a nice taper going on with it. Got a wonderful swedge. You got your nail nick here, the Match Striker nail nick, and the blade is extremely sharp. Do I have a piece of paper here? But what I can tell you is, with the blade, even though it is sharp, you really have to use the front or the back half of the blade for cutting, because basically when you get into the wide belly, it starts falling off. So as long as you're in that first part, you can cut, but as soon as you pass that line there, it stops cutting. Because of the belly. And the same thing, I mean, you can rock down on things, and I think that's what they would do with when they would cut into the bill. They would cut down into it like so, and then plunge into it a bit, because you're not going to poke too well into it. I mean, you would probably get a lot of give, but just rocking down, you can see that you are also getting cuts into this. So if you're using, but again, rocking down, you can only rock to about the halfway point before your hand hits, and so you've got about an inch of blade you can rock with and an inch of blade you can cut with. Like I said, it reminds me a little bit of more of a scalpel, so if you're cutting into something like that, it's going to work better. But you don't have the full blade. You can't see, and that's why the practicality of the knife I see is kind of limited. I know a lot of people are saying otherwise, but to me the blade shape kind of makes it impractical for most uses other than what it was designed for. But that didn't matter to me, because I bought it for the historical significance of the knife. I mean, the pattern has been around for a long time and is a very unique pattern. And it was a work knife used, a little bit of Americana history here. The cotton sampler, very specific type of knife, and that's why I bought it. I would have probably not bought a second one unless it came out in white smooth bone or tortoiseshell, but then this one showed up, the one in the black smooth bone, and I decided I needed to get that one also. Now they call it black smooth bone, but this one looks more like a dark forest green, and it's very, you can see, you can pick up the bone grain in here, and that's a problem with black dye. Sometimes it just dyes that way. You don't have a very even dye job on them sometimes, and this one is definitely a case where the dye is not perfect. Fortunately, the backside, while the middle portion is a little more muted and more solid, hard to see in here, but you see it's also got a lot of that green color going on too, so the two sides are pretty well evenly matched. The only thing I really am not crazy about on here is the large slant R bolster. A lot of people are complaining about that. I like it, but I'm also getting tired of it, like so many other people. Otherwise, the fit and finish of this is just fantastic, just like it is on the other one. The quality of the build, no questions asked. They're both just fantastic. They knew exactly what they were doing with it. See a little bit of gap right there and between the brass liner and the back spring, but nothing significantly bad. You got to remember, this is like a $15 knife. And what I really bought it for, though, is right there, the double R shield, which is very smooth into the black bone. And this is the only knife in the Rough Ryder line that has that double R nickel silver shield, and that's why I picked it up. And it is different than any other knife in their black smooth bone collection like this. It's got a titanium coated blade. I think they might all have the titanium coated blade, but it's lacking the red liners, and none of the other black smooth bone have the double R shield. 448 stainless steel blade, just like the other one. As you can see, it says titanium there, black titanium coating. You can see on the back there, 440 razor sharp, and you can really see the pattern number, RR1726. This one was RR1422, the Appaloosa bone. This one's out of stock now. You can't find it. I don't know if they'll ever come back with it. This one's been around for a bit, but it is going to disappear, and I got a feeling once it's gone, it'll be gone. One other thing that I noticed that is different between this one and this one, if you look at the nail nicks, they're positioned differently. This one cuts into the swedge of the knife, which, you know, kind of cuts into the aesthetics a little bit, but it works a little bit better. And the other one runs along the line of the swedge, right at the bottom of the swedge, and I guess it works. It's a little harder to get into, and you know what? I'm not really sure if I like it more or less, but it definitely shows the swedge better on this one because of the way the nail nick is sitting there. Notice this side. But yeah, great walk and talk on both of them. Usability wise, I think I covered that pretty well. I don't see it as extremely useful. I know other people really like carrying it. Some people say it's a great conversation starter, but I think any good knife is a great conversation starter. It doesn't have to be an oddity or anything. Like I said, the main reason I wanted a cotton sampler is because of the historical significance of the pattern. I could not afford the Great Eastern when it rolled around. I wasn't about to spend that kind of money on that when this one costs about 10 times less, 10% the price of the Great Eastern. Now the Great Eastern is probably in the $200 or $300 range, and these are in the $15 range, and well worth it in my opinion. The only other ones, like I said, that I would get from Rough Ryder would probably be now a white smooth bone or a tortoiseshell, at least in the large one. I am going to pick up the small cotton sampler and see what I think about that one. I'll get that one in the stag bone. So that'll be my third that I have, but that one is a small one. It's only 3 inches long, so closed. So this one's 4 inches. So it'll be about there, and it's got a 2-inch blade, so that'll be interesting to see how useful that is, or if it's just going to be like a little spay blade on steroids. We'll see. Just don't know for sure. But all in all, my recommendations for the folks who are interested in it is that this is something, if you look for the out of the ordinary knife or something, then a cotton sampler is right up your line. But if you're looking for something a little more practical to use, I don't know if this is the knife that you're going to want to grab. Like I said, besides a white smooth bone or a tortoise shell, I think the only other one I would be able to consider actually picking up would be like one of those E.C. Simmons ones from the 1930s, if I could afford it. And it would also have to be in pretty good shape. But anyway, that's the Cotton Sampler. Really cool looking knife. Not so functional in my opinion, but for me, definitely something I needed to have in my collection simply because, it is a piece of Americana. And also it's really kind of cool looking knife. I don't know what else to say. Talk to you again soon.
Thank you for visiting Knife Chats. I hope you enjoyed your time here. If you did, please give us a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel and ringing that notification bell so that you will be notified when the next episode of Knife Chats is up online. Thanks again. See you soon.